The AIC staff recommended a 7% budget cut for Alabama State University. ASU had requested a 26% increase over the 1980-81 figure, but the staff says the cut is warranted because they feel ASU got more than its share this year and because the latest figures show a decrease in enrollment. ASU President Dr. Levi Watkins says he accepts the recommendation, but hopes the commission would give black institutions special funding consideration because of their special mission. For Auburn University, the staff recommended an increase, but it was $2 million less than what Auburn had asked for. Auburn President Hanley Funderburk congratulated the staff on its funding procedure, but asked that the commission reconsider some areas. Dr. Funderburk says his staff was conservative in the amount they asked for and hoped that the commission would give them that amount. As for AUM, Dr. Jim Wilson noted that they too came close in getting what they asked for, but says he hopes the commission will appropriate more money for them as well. So far, the only areas to get the amount they asked for are junior and community colleges and technical colleges. The staff recommended a 4.8% increase for junior and community colleges and 12.1% for technical colleges. Tomorrow, the commission will continue the budget hearings, and the unified budget will come up for a vote tomorrow afternoon. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The train ride is nothing new. It's a regularly scheduled event so officials can determine defects in the tracks. They're looking for abnormalities such as warping and discrepancy in elevation and distance of the rails. The Federal Railway Administration operates a special two-car unit which checks these parameters by computer. The FRA owns 3 of these units, each of which cost $6 million when constructed 5 years ago.
The car records, measures every foot as it progresses down the track, and this goes into a computer, and then the computer prints out any defective conditions that we might find.
FRA officials say it will take some time to process today's information on the Montgomery-Birmingham line. When the PSC receives the information, they'll notify the railroads of the defects and then make follow-up inspections. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
The interim committee has been meeting since summer trying to solve problems with the state's unemployment compensation system. High unemployment is draining more than $3.5 million a week from the fund. The committee has voted to recommend a long-term shift in the system to what's called the benefit ratio method of funding. The idea is to base an employer's unemployment tax on a ratio involving benefits he's paid to workers in the past. That way, employers pay money into the fund in proportion to the amount their employees take out. The fund's treasurer, Curtis Hall, estimates the state will pay $200 million in unemployment compensation this year, but will collect only $150 million. The fund now has a balance of $90 million. Part of the proposed legislative package is to set up a minimum balance for the fund to prevent cash flow problems during economically depressed years. The system would have built-in adjustment factors so that the unemployment fund could bounce back after low years. The committee is also considering an added 0.5% surcharge to businesses to keep the fund from running out of money in early 1982. The legislators will meet again in January to prepare the committee report. Lisa Nielsen, WSFA TV News.
The education financial picture remains depressed. School officials say they need an increase in revenue of about 12 to 16%. Joe Piazzo says that the 7% proration spreads revenue very thin. He says the increased prices for gasoline means the school system will apparently receive substantially less revenue from this source than anticipated for this time of the year. A report on building programs for the system by Associate Superintendent George Harris reveals that Brubaker Junior High plans are about complete. The project is expected to be put up for bids early next year. The new school will replace Baldwin Junior High. The board put Chilton School on Sayre Street up for bids, but with the stipulation that any renovation by the buyer retain the historical aspect of the turn-of-the-century building. The school system will begin taking applications for kindergarten in May. Kindergarten space has to be determined in a lottery because of the lack of kindergartens. Students will be selected August 14th. George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Pensions and Security began this fiscal year expecting almost $11 million from the state, but $6 million in conditional money was cut out, leaving only $5 million for P&S to work with. Almost immediately, a number of changes were made in travel expenses, purchases, and a freeze was implemented on new employees. By late last week, it was apparent to Finance Director Sid McDonald that those few cuts wouldn't make ends meet. So this week, Pensions Commissioner Gary Cooper was sent a memo telling him that further cuts would have to be made. The letter says it's the specific request to the governor that the savings be accomplished through personnel cuts and not cuts in welfare benefits. Because 2/3 of each Pensions Department employee is paid with federal matching money, state officials say it will take as many as 200 to 250 employees to realize the savings needed to stay within the $5 million Pensions and Security budget. Deputy Commissioner Gil Jennings says he's drawing up 3 options for reductions involving employee cutbacks, programmatic changes, and voluntary departmental cuts in salary. The cutbacks are expected statewide, from the county offices all the way up. But by virtue of the protections of the merit system, it appears most likely that the last hired will be the first fired. The 3 options will be presented to the finance director and the governor in early January. Then one of the plans will be implemented. But according to Pensions and Security officials, because of the red tape involved, it could be April before it's known who, if anyone, is taken off the payroll. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
We have given out numbered practice jerseys, different colors to the offensive and defensive teams. When a person walks up to our practice session, a young man will give them a roster with a number. So when they see number 23 catch the ball, the guy can say, oh, that's Ken Toller of Ole Miss, or Joe Adams throwing the ball, or Jay Venuto throwing the ball. The people at Maxwell Air Force Base have been very interested in the blue-gray game, and they want us to assure the public that not only are they welcome out there, but they want them to come and sort of lay out the welcome mat.
Williams had surgery, will not have him. It's for 4 or 5 of them. I just talked to the doctor, as a matter of fact, yesterday about Ken Coley. You know, he has a full nerve in his hand here, and we was hopefully going to get him back. But the doctor told me yesterday they didn't want to take a chance on it. He still couldn't do certain things. So he won't be in our plans at all. We won't even address him.
Good luck, Coach.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we'll need it.
I feel really happy because the bench won the ball game, even though Frank Poindexter made some big free throws down the stretch.
Sure did. That's going to be a nice habit, isn't it?
Well, you know, we have changed our delay game and allowed Frank to make better use of his free throw shooting ability, and that's helped us a great deal. We wouldn't mind going to a delay a little bit earlier now because of his ability, and he only made one mistake tonight, which it's a new thing for him, but I think he's going to handle it real well.
There are 22 officers on the Capitol Security Police Force. That's about the size of a small city police department. These men have the same arrest powers as a deputy sheriff. Their jurisdiction includes the state capitol and surrounding buildings, the State Forestry Commission shop at Gunter Field, the Social Security Office, and the Unemployment Compensation Office on McDonough Street. On any given day or night, their duties may seem to be a little routine, but sometimes there's some excitement.
Not too long ago, we had one that wanted to see the governor. Of course, the governor couldn't see him, and at this point, he got kind of violent and grabbed the security officer, which was the bodyguard for the governor, grabbed him and grabbed hold of his weapon. And of course, we had to answer the call and had to help subdue the man. And he did have hold of the trooper's weapon. And you run into this not real frequent, but you can't make them understand that the governor can't see them. And they think they should be able to just walk in and see him right there, and then you have to treat them very light. You know, you have to be real careful.
Other problems which must be dealt with on a daily basis are thefts of state workers' property as well as state property itself. And of course, people who park in the wrong place sometimes cause a good bit of confusion. You may think these men are little more than professional night watchmen, but they carry some very impressive credentials. All of the officers except 5 have prior police experience, ranging from 5 to 13 years. In addition, all of them must have completed 240 hours of specialized training. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
Although the governor intends to spend his entire vacation enjoying the scenery of the area around Zurich, Switzerland, he will take a couple of days after Christmas to tour American military facilities that might be used by Alabama National Guardsmen should they ever be mobilized. The governor says he wants information on such fundamental items as what's expected of the Alabama Guard, what sequence of events would take place, and how well maintained equipment and facilities are, and what level of training is expected of Alabama troops. Although the governor says the information will be useful to Guard planning purposes, his interest in the condition of the equipment stems from a personal experience during the Korean conflict, when apparently ill-prepared American troops suffered heavy initial losses.
I was a freshman. I had some very close friends that were juniors in high school, seniors in high school. 3 of them wound up very quickly in combat there, and 2 never left Korea.
Another bit of business the governor said he would like to conduct would be a visit to a Swiss manufacturer to discuss possibilities of locating in Alabama. Other than that, Governor James says he's hoping for a white Christmas. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News.
Finally found one over there.
Thank you, dear Father, for those who have given us their lives that we might have this freedom today. May we not take it for granted, but may each of us realize our responsibility of providing freedom for others.
Well, I tell you, I consulted a lot of pro scouts and a lot of coaches and a Barfield and this Pepsi generation boy here, and we got together and got a pretty good bunch of boys, I think. It looks like a real fine squad. They big, they fast. I just hope they can play.
Coach McAfee, I guess you're excited about the squad you have out here.
Yes, I tell you, we have some great talent, and of course, we like to throw the ball, so we have some real fast receivers, and we have some real outstanding running backs. We're looking forward to the game.
Coach Barfield, you got a couple of your old players here, don't you?
Yeah, I sure do. There's 3 of them here, and we are expecting another one possibly. Stevenson, Byron Franklin, and Frank Warren, and they're good players and good people. I think they'll do well in this game.
And you've played against some of the others on the team.
Unfortunately, we sure have, Dave. Several of them. I was just visiting with Chris Williams today and asked him did he thank Franklin for dropping that ball down there against him.
Coach McAfee, have you played against some of these guys up north?
Yes, we have several players from the ACC. I'm sure glad they're on our team today, though.
Well, it's not hard to find out where they are. It's a little hard to get them here sometimes, but we usually contact their coaches, and our coaches are interested in seeing them come here.
Coach Restick, you've been here before. Anything different this year?
Oh, I think there's a lot different. I think they're going after us this year. Believe me, we came down here and we were lucky last year, and we just have to get ready. They have a fine football team over there.
How about your guys out here?
I think they are super also. It'll be a great game, and I hope everybody comes out to see it.
Coach Johnson, you looking forward to it?
Well, I'm excited about working with all these fine athletes. You look at them, they're as fine athletes as there is in the country. You know, I wish we could have all this talent on one football team back home, but it's going to be a fun game.
You brought a couple of your guys out here, didn't you?
Right. We've got 3 players that are from Oklahoma State, and I think they'll fit in with all this talent that we have.
In my opinion, it's one of the most significant opinions they've issued, and it's not. After much soul searching, I have the abiding feeling that capital punishment does deter crime. It probably does not deter all crime. Some murders may be an exception to the rule, but I believe that it does deter enough crime that it should not be withheld from the arsenal of weapons of a civilized society to combat crime, without which that society is threatened to become overrun by the lawless among us.
Called the Global Weather Experiment, it lasted throughout 1979 and involved several thousand scientists and technicians in the most massive intelligence-gathering operation ever focused on our planet. Our most sophisticated tools and resources were deployed over every part of the globe and in the sky. Here's why. There are 4 billion people on Earth now. By the year 2000, we'll total 6 billion, and that big number raises some big questions. How to produce food for us all, how to deal with the changes we're causing in our planet, how to live within the limits of the Earth. The answers may well depend on a knowledge we don't yet possess, a knowledge of the world weather system as a whole. The Global Weather Experiment was a first step in the right direction, say scientists, and a giant one. Analyzing all the information gathered will likely take them, even with computers, a decade. Next time, a look at one of the most critical weather phenomena in the world, the monsoon rains. I'm Dan Atkinson with Weather Beat.
Come in. Like this one, smile. Let me see your ball, Pommy.
Looking for volunteers to help me distribute the toys and food baskets on Tuesday. At 3 o'clock I'll be here with as much help as I can round up between now and then to pick up the food baskets and the toy baskets.
Police say the story began when a man broke into the home of Rex Riggins on Baldwin Brook Drive early this morning. The intruder woke up the Riggins and forced Mrs. Riggins to tie up her husband and son before the intruder bound her.
Undoubtedly, he untied Mr. Riggins after he had carried the wife into the other bedroom and tied her up. He went in, ramshacked the house, stealing items from the house, silverware, .22 caliber pistol, and some cash, money. Then he went back and got Mr. Riggins. They went outside and got Mr. Riggins, his vehicle, and went to the Southside Drug.
Rutland says Bell allegedly took several $1,000s worth of narcotics. Police apprehended Bell as he was getting into the car his wife was driving on Highway 331 south of the bypass. Lieutenant Rutland says other charges, in addition to robbery and kidnapping, are pending against the Bells. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
Helping and working on them and fixing them up, really.
The budget represents about $2 million more than the AIC staff recommended to the board. Some schools like Auburn were approved for more than the staff suggested, while others, like Alabama State, were approved for the same amount in the staff report. In the case of Auburn, $700,000 above the staff recommendation will be distributed equally between the Agricultural Experiment Station and Cooperative Extension Services. For Troy State, the board okayed the staff report giving TSU's main campus about $15,000 more than it had asked for, but no money was allotted for some of its off-campus branches. The off-campus issue will be dealt with at the next AIC meeting. After approving the final recommended budget of $322 million, the Commission decided to allow its staff to provide Governor James with information he'd requested on a budget based on a total of $280 and $290 million. The governor said he wanted those figures available in case the state doesn't come up with the $322 million. This doesn't mean AIC goes along with those figures. In fact, the members say they'll support the colleges and universities in getting the full $322 million budget passed in the upcoming legislative session. Cassandra Taylor, WSFA TV News.
The unanimous decision by the state Supreme Court leaves the law intact, but orders procedural changes in dealing with capital cases. This requires a jury in a death penalty case to first determine guilt and then in separate proceedings fix the sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court had prohibited juries in capital cases from returning a verdict of guilty for any crime less than first-degree murder. It allowed the jury only to acquit or to convict a defendant with a recommended sentence of death. This has generally been termed as the kill or set free provision. The state court says because the U.S. Supreme Court rules certain portions of the state's death penalty unconstitutional, doesn't void the remainder of the law. The Alabama Supreme Court's 44-page ruling comes in the appeals case of death row inmate Gilbert Beck, who was sentenced to die in 1976 for the killing of a Boaz, Alabama man. In granting Beck a new trial, the court notes that the 44 inmates in Alabama's death row may have to be retried, but it emphasized the decision shouldn't be considered as holding that either that the conviction or the death penalty was appropriate in each of the cases. Reporting from the state Supreme Court, George Mitchell, WSFA TV News.
Monsoon is an Arabic word. It means seasonal wind. We're familiar with the daily reversal of winds along our own Gulf Coast, where by day cool air from the sea flows in to replace warmer air over the land, and by night, when the sea is warmer, the land supplies the breeze. There are places in the world, however, India among them, where geography sets in motion winds which blow steadily from the land through the winter, then from the sea throughout the summer. These monsoon winds make the winter dry and the summers wet, extremely wet. The summer monsoon is life-giving, or can be if it brings the rain in time and if it brings enough but not too much rain. Otherwise, crops fail and millions suffer. During the year-long global weather experiment of 1979, scientists from around the world watched and measured India's summer monsoon as it came and went. And their findings may help half the world's people draw from these seasonal winds more good and less harm. I'm Dan Atkinson with WeatherBeat.
death penalty is a denial of the redemption of Christ, came to bring to all people, no matter who we are or what we have done. We've come to your mansion tonight because you, as governor, have the power to refuse to sign a death bill, which will be a death warrant for hundreds, as well as the authority to prevent the execution of a single individual.
A nightmare came true for some Pioneer Electric customers this week. Pioneer customers read their own meters, and the company checks on them every 3 or 4 years. A few customers over the past several years have been misreading theirs, and they got whopping bills. One woman's bill, for instance, in December was $4,500. The director of the power company points out, though, that the problem is not very widespread, and the company is trying to work out a way to let the customers pay off the money in installments. There is a footnote to that story. Late in the week, those Lowndes County residents were told a Texas millionaire had heard about their plight and was coming to Alabama to bail them out. But the so-called millionaire didn't show up as promised yesterday. He apparently doesn't exist. Alabama Power, meanwhile, was talking about a rate increase. The power company says it will not, however, be for $300 million, as some had been speculating. According to company spokesman Chris Conway, it won't even be a record increase request. The rate hike request probably will come when Unit 2 at the Farley nuclear plant goes online this coming spring. A lot of folks were looking at serious money problems this week. Up to 250 employees may be laid off at the Department of Pensions and Security during the next few months. The department had been expecting $11 million from the state. It's only getting $5 million. The cutbacks are expected to be statewide from the county level all the way up. And education in Alabama is facing the same dilemma on just about every front. Most of the emphasis this past week has been on next year's funding. The Interim Legislative Committee on Higher Education wrapped up its recommendations this week. The group is expected to go over its findings next week and release a report before Christmas on some strong budget changes for next year. The governor's also been working on funding projections for education. The biggest problem overall still seems to be that the money educators say they need to operate is a lot more than the money the state sees coming in next year. So there's not much question that most schools in Alabama won't be getting as much as they want in 1981. And the question they all face now is what to cut back in the coming year. The state's highest court this week decided that Alabama's 1975 death penalty law is constitutional. The court did, however, take out those portions of the law the U.S. Supreme Court had held to be unconstitutional earlier in the year. In the ruling, the Alabama court ordered one death row inmate, Gilbert Beck, be retried and said several other death row cases would be reviewed. The battle for Craig Air Force Base moved into high gear this week. Monday, federal judge Virgil Pittman listened to arguments about ownership of the Selma installation. The city of Selma says it owns Craig. The government wants to sell Craig to the city of Selma. The city of Selma wants to know why it's got to pay for something it already owns. The government says Selma doesn't own the base. And while that argument rolls on, the houses on the base stand empty and are slowly rotting away. The story incidentally took another twist late this week when the government decided it wants to look over Craig as a possible place to house Cuban or Haitian refugees. Selma Mayor Joe Smitherman had a pointed answer to that idea. Mayor Smitherman wants to indicate to the government that he's not too thrilled at the prospect of a refugee camp outside his city. So he says he'll put police in riot gear at the Craig front gate to stop government officials from even looking at the base. Skip Haley, WSFA TV News. let's look down the road now into the 80s. What do you see coming in the next decade in terms particularly of energy as it relates to gasoline?
I think if you look at the world oil situation today, world production capability is fairly static. The world can produce so much oil if all the producers produce. Right now, that's the total amount that's being consumed. So if we have an increase in consumption, or if something happens, like in the Middle East with the war between Iran and Iraq, we lose some production capability, then there isn't enough to go around. If you add to this the fact that the traditional fields in most places, in this country, in the Soviet Union, and other places, the production is declining. Our production is declining in this country just because the fields are running out. And if you add up the numbers of who is using what in the world in the way of oil, and what the projections are in the future, it looks as though the 80s are going to be probably the worst decade as far as petroleum products go in our history. I say the 80s will be the worst because by 1990 we have some synthetic fuels programs in this country that will start coming on board where they'll be producing oil from shale and from coal.
And you think these
so
will be significant by 1990?
Well, the present program by the Department of Energy is to have 2 million barrels a day production by 1990. I personally think we ought to have more than that sooner. And I think that one of the things here in Alabama, we have been upgraded to the status of an Alabama Department of Energy. And the governor has got Mr. Ravan to be the director of the department. And I think under Mr. Ravan's leadership, we're going to move into resource development. And this is exciting because we have a lot of good quality coal in Alabama. We have oil shale. And if we can develop our own resources here, maybe show people in the rest of the country how to make gasoline from coal, that it can be done and done in an environmentally acceptable way, we'd not only help Alabama, but we'd help the nation. We also have significant resources from which to produce alcohol. We could produce significant amounts of alcohol and maybe run a segment of our economy, maybe state vehicles or something like that on alcohol alone. We have oil shale in Alabama. Right now we have a program to assess the extent of the resource. It's primarily up in northeast Alabama, but the oil shale is up there. Now, if I get a little bit away from oil and get to natural gas, our coal, particularly in the Warrior Basin, is about the most gaseous coal that you can find. So if you drill a well into the coal, fracture the coal hydraulically, the gas will come out just like a gas well. And they're doing that in Alabama now, and they're planning more of it out in Tuscaloosa. So I think we'll have adequate amounts of gas, natural gas, for some time to come by developing what's called unconventional gas through our coal fields. I think we have to keep increasing our production of traditional forms of oil and gas. But I think we need a major shift to developing oil from coal, not only in Alabama, but throughout the nation.
Scenario included Ronald McDonald, Captain Crook, the Hamburglar, Grimace, and even Santa Claus. The place was Montgomery's Garrett Coliseum, where throngs of youngsters, parents, and public officials gathered for the Christmas fantasy. Besides entertainment, the show had a special purpose.
It was a Ronald McDonald show. They put it on especially to raise items that we will use in the Youth Aid Division Needy Family Christmas program. There was actually no admission to the show, but people were asked if they would contribute something, item, a non-perishable food item, article of clothing, a toy, or even cash donations. All of this will be used in the Needy Family program itself.
Corporal Bailey says they received more contributions than expected. The Youth Aid Division will distribute the items to needy families on Christmas Eve day. Jane Matheson, WSFA TV News.
'Twas the Saturday before Christmas, and all through the mall, mostly all the shoppers were stirring, but some weren't having a ball. The sale signs were hung in the window with care in hopes that some last-minute shoppers would soon be there. The children were clinging to their mommy's leg while visions of toys danced in their head. And Mama with her children and Papa with the goods had just spent all the money, as he knew he would. When out in the parking lot, which was so terribly packed, the shoppers released all those heavy sacks. And so the last-minute shoppers, who probably spent all their cash in good cheer, are probably saying to themselves, I'm glad Christmas only comes once a year. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
You know, we might not get a chance to see it. We might be working.
we don't think that we really had any big problems this year. We've handled it without any problems so far, and hopefully the biggest volume has already peaked, you know. Bring them on in. We'll do our best to get them home. Sure will, by Christmas.
Statistically, I ended up second in the nation, third total offense. I feel that I am one of the premier quarterbacks of this decade, and you know, I feel good about it. I think that's a contribution and a credit to Tennessee State and our coaching staff and community of Nashville. So it's something I think is a guy could be proud of.
I guess you expect to be throwing a few footballs come Christmas Day.
Definitely. Wake Forest coaches, he has expressed to us that we're going to throw the football. He's from his philosophy is to pass, and Jay and I are roommates, and so we have a chance to talk over a lot of different things. And so I think it should be an exciting game. We all are All-Americans, without a doubt.
Joe, where'd you get that nickname, 747?
Well, it originates back from Tennessee State. Kendall Stevens, our SID, originally gave me the name. And what it is it's a philosophy that every guy at Tennessee State has a nickname. I guess it's something that you can relate to better and quicker when you come there as a freshman, to have a nickname and people to call you that and respond. So I feel like it's just a reflection of Tennessee State, the nickname, and it's grown as I've grown in the last 4 years, and people begin to print it and write it and seem to like it.
Why 85 is a critical year in terms of energy?
Well, it just seemed that most of the projections that we have received, and we get projections from the oil companies and from the Department of Energy, seem to say that 85 is going to be kind of a bad year. As an example, there was a report recently from CIA that said that the fields in Russia are declining. Now, Russia is the largest single producer of oil in the world. At that time, I think this was last year, they were producing 11.7 million barrels a day. They were using 11 million within the Soviet bloc and exporting 700,000 to the rest of the world. Well, it's estimated by 85, that was the estimate, they'd have to be a net importer of 1 million barrels a day because of their declining production. So that means the world would need another 1.7 million barrels a day just to keep up with demand. And if you add to that, the free world nations recently did a study of all their conservation programs and what this is doing to their consumption. And with their declining production, taking into account conservation and small cars, the free world nations apparently are going to need about 4 million barrels a day more by 85 than now. So already you've got almost 6 million barrels a day more needed with no planned increase in production capability. And I think the reason I say 85 is because the projection went out to 85, and then in 1990 we'll start getting some synthetic fuels produced, hopefully, in the nation, unless we can speed that up.
One of the good things, get to come down here, which normally we win, you know, usually in the Rose Bowl, but we had a kind of up and down year, I guess. When SU loses 2 games, it's a bad year for them, but we turned out on a good note beating Notre Dame, and I had a good time this year.
Eric, I guess you were pleased with that big win over Notre Dame.
Yeah, very much so. It was an emotional uplift after the 2 losses to Washington and UCLA.
And Kevin, I know Marcus Allen got a lot of playing time this year, but SC threw the ball, and you happened to be on a few receiving.
Oh, yes. Yeah, like Steve said, we had a couple of ups and downs. But the main thing, as far as our team was just have fun right now. The probation kind of hurt us, and we couldn't go to the bowl game. So I think we decided that we're just going to go out and play football.
Old Man Winter finally made his official debut early this morning. However, as he was coming in, not many people were out to welcome Mr. Winter, who's expected to stay around for the next 3 months. The ducks didn't seem to mind the winter visitor. Neither did some of the birds, or at least the ones that didn't fly farther south. The cold temperatures didn't drive away local baseball fans. Although the 3-member team didn't have any spectators, Kerry Crane says the springtime sport can be played no matter what the weather, even without all 9 players.
Where's the rest of your team?
Well, I'll tell you, this is enough right here. We're just working with my son and his friend.
It's not too cold for you out here?
No, absolutely not.
You're not well insulated, it doesn't look like.
Well, I'll be cold when I stand still, that's all.
Thinking about spring, Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.